Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to invite our next speakers on stage. We have with us it's Juniper Networks, and we would like to invite on stage Mr. Rajesh Kumar S., Head Systems Engineering, Enterprise and Government, Juniper Networks, and he will be followed by Kewal Patil, Enterprise Systems Engineering Lead, West. So, please get your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, as Mr. Rajesh Kumar S. joins us on stage. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking your time, and also Express Computer giving us an opportunity to talk about our Juniper innovations, what's happening for the last decade, right? And to start with, yesterday I had a couple of discussions with the people who are here, and the underline what it came out was experience. So that was the key. So I was listening to them, and I heard everywhere people talking about experience. So now I understood that experience is the key. So how do we get that experience? So Juniper, for the last 2.5 years, has done a lot of acquisitions of companies, which was actually moving towards getting that experience back to the users as well as back to the operators. That means the people who manage the networks. So that are the two key things which Juniper vision is in terms of bringing the experience back to the users as well as back to the IT team. So moving further, what I just wanted to talk about is the trends in Bfsi, what we have seen, right? Because when we go and meet the customers, they talk about the mergers and the acquisitions of the banks, what they are doing, the digital transformation journey, what they are going with, and also the regulations of the RBI with the smaller banks and also with the nationalized banks in terms of security. So there are a lot of things, and also when we look at it, there is a top notch in terms of technology what is being used, whether it can be applications, whether it can be apps, whether it can be services what they want to roll out. It all leads to, end of the day, is the technology what they want to adapt. Because today, earlier I can say about 6-7 years back when I was talking about cloud, it was a buzzword, but today it is not so, right? Because everyone has started looking at the cloud, everyone has started adapting the cloud, right? So in the banking sector, it may be the front end may be the cloud, but their critical data can be still in their data centers. But at the end of the day, this multi-cloud adaptation is going on, right? So then what happens? The trend what is changing is that applications and the apps what the banking is looking at is changing. Because you are getting into a cloud-based applications, you are getting into a virtualization kind of applications, you are getting into the containerization. So there is a lot of changes which are happening. So there is a lot of adaptability, there is a lot of flexibility, there are a lot of changes which is going through. So looking at those trends, what we see also is data center transformation, right? Because when we look at data center transformation, it is just not the applications, it is not the apps. It is also refresh of the data centers, adding more data centers in terms of the DR, nearline data center, right? And also cloud adaptability. So there are a lot of changes which are happening in the data center, and they are also moving into virtualization, containerization, those kind of aspects coming into the play. The scale what they are looking at, the growth for next 4 to 5 years what they are looking at. So all these are leading into data center transformation. The second what we see is key is connecting the branches. Branch connectivity with cost-effective solutions. Because today, the banks, the finance institutions, everyone are talking about not using MPLS, not using lease lines, right? Because they are expensive. How can we cut down the cost? Because there are more number of branches, but what they need is a cost-effective solutions. How can we adapt the next transport technologies? Like it can be broadband, it can be internet, it can be any kind of transport technologies, but how can we adapt that? And how can we get the same experience back to the users? So that is the key thing which is happening in terms of the digital transformation. The third is always security. Because the way we see the security has changed completely. Today, when we talk about security, security is not about talking about silos, right? The security what we are talking about is just not perimeter. The security what we are not talking about is just not at the branch. Today, perimeter is everywhere, and that security has changed because, again, if I want to stress, you need to have virtualization security, you need to have containerization security, you need to have a same policy following your data center and the public cloud where you host your applications, right? So the security has to follow as the applications and the services move across, and how the users access those applications and the apps, then the security has to follow those. So the change in the security, what we call it as a connected security. Today, there is no silos. Security should be connected end to end from the user to the applications. That is the way the security is looked at. Finally, when all these transformations are happening, the key thing is automation, the operational efficiency, and how fast we can bring these transformations, roll out the applications, and then be competitive in the market, right? So those are the things which are really changing in terms of the digital transformation. So that is why I just wanted to say that it is just not at the data center, but when you look at end to end, what it means is for us is what we say is client to cloud. That means if you start from any of your user being connected, whether he's connected on Wi-Fi, whether he's connected on wired, whether he's using the WAN technology to access the cloud or the data center, but if you see the earlier slide what I talked about, the transformation journey is actually moving into client to cloud technology, right? Because this gives the entire digital transformation, because there is a brand transformation, there is a data center transformation, and there is the way the users gets connected to their networks. So if you see this, there are multiple technologies, right? There is a Wi-Fi, there is a wired, there is a WAN, and there is a data center. But everything coming on single AI-driven AI ops. It gives you that flexibility, that scalability, and operational efficiency. Because today, if this is the architecture what the BFSI or the banking are looking at, then the operational, the complexity what it brings in is enormous and huge. Because you don't know exactly where the problem is. When there is a problem, you can't identify and pinpoint exactly where the problem is. It may be at Wi-Fi, it may be at wired, or it may be at the WAN or at the data center. But the user is not able to access the application, or he is not getting the experience what he is supposed to get, right? So in those kind of scenarios, what we have done is we have brought the AI ops back to the entire client to cloud technology. That means to say that we can pinpoint the problem exactly where the problem is before the user comes to know about it, and then actually help the ops team to resolve those issues faster so that there is no any downtime in the network. So that is the capability of client to cloud. So what we are doing is we are not looking again the transformation in a silos kind of an architecture. We are taking it end to end in terms of one single dashboard. That is from user to the application what he access, and where is the problem, and where is this issues coming up, and how we can resolve it, looking at the pinpoint kind of an architecture. So this is what we call it as, what I talk about is, we are moving from SLA based to SLE. That means service level assurance to service level experience. That is how we are changing the complete game in terms of bringing the AI ops back into the game completely. And if you see, that is why we call it as experience is the new uptime. Earlier, we used to talk about reliability, we used to talk about resiliency, but today, what customers are looking at is experience. Experience is the one which they are looking at. And whenever we talk to customers, it is just not user experience. It is actually the skill set and the operational experience. That means the IT team who can identify the issues faster, resolve the issues faster, and roll out the applications faster, right? So that is the capability what we bring in terms of the AI ops, what we have brought into the innovation from Wi-Fi to wired to WAN to data center. So I will touch upon each at a very high level because we don't have much of time, but how do we address that, right? That is the key. I talked about AIOps covering the entire client to cloud technology, but how do we address it for each of the segment what I am talking about, right? In terms of data center, the key requirements today is that, for example, they have to roll out the applications faster. They have to build the network infrastructure faster, and that should be replicable. That means if I build a pod, one pod today, and I build a blueprint for it, then that should be applicable for the multiple pods what I build tomorrow. That means see the faster scale of bringing it of pods when you have that kind of a blueprint in place, correct? And the scale and the agility what you need to look at. And also if you want to do the adaptation of cloud to the multi-cloud architecture, how this my data center can move into a multi-cloud architecture tomorrow. So these are some of the things which comes as a requirement in terms of the data center transformation is concerned. So if you look at, we have a solution which is known as Apstra. Apstra is a fabric management tool which gives you the capability to do intent-based networking. Intent means that your IT team will put an intent that my data center should be in this architecture. And what happens is, how comes in terms of the intent which has been pushed as a configuration to entire data center devices. And then it forms a closed loop automation in terms of saying that whether your data center is working as per the intent you have mentioned from when you build the blueprint. If not, there is an anomaly. If there is an anomaly, where is that anomaly? Is it at the switching level, or is it at the applications having high latency, or is it because of certain configuration parameters someone has changed which has drastically changed my intent, right? That is what it gives you in terms of the capabilities from day 0 to day 2. That means you can build a blueprint before you deploy the data center. Okay, racks, servers, cables, switching, VLAN, access list, EVPN, VXLAN, you can define everything as a blueprint, and then you can deploy it completely on your data center in days rather than which was taking months and weeks. And then you can replicate that across multiple pods in the future. And then you can have an AI-based closed loop automation to get back the intent what has been done is working as it is, or there is any anomaly which I need to go back and change it. So this is what we call it as day 0 to day 2 operations entirely in terms of a fabric management tool known as Apstra. And the key thing of this is it is a multi-OEM. That's what we have put there in terms of it is not only Juniper, you can have any OEM products in the data center and the same intent can be applied across the multi-OEM architecture. That is what it gives the capability in when we talk about transformation of data center in days rather than weeks and months. The second what we have is the branch, right? We call it as an experience fabric because when I talk to customers, they talk about SD-WAN. But SD-WAN, still I think it's a buzzword because it depends on the use cases what you need to have. For the, right? Because the SD-WAN, everyone says I need a SD-WAN. But when you look at a SD-WAN, the use cases of a particular customer A may not be the same use cases of a customer B, right? Because why I'm saying is that when you see this, the branch connectivity, some may say that I have broadband, I have lease line, or I have a VSAT, or any kind of transport agnostic is what is relevant. I don't have to depend on what is the transport the customer is giving to us. But the key criteria will be how do I bring the simplicity and reduce the complexity. That is what, because branches are hundreds to thousands which needs to be connected. That means first thing which comes up is the simplicity matters, because how do I manage this in a simple way, thousands of branches? How do I reduce my complexity? How do I do my fast failover? Because end of the day is happening. If something happens, then I have to redo that complete thing. Voice over IP calls are going through. If there is any link issues, will my calls get dropped? All these are necessity, right? So when you look at this, what we have as a solution is known as, again coming from the AI ops, which is known as a SD-WAN 3.0. Here what we provide you is the capability to scale, because When you look at SD-WAN, the first thing comes up is IPsec and a hub architecture. N into N minus 1 IPsec tunnels with a hub. But what we talk about our SD-WAN is that we don't have any IPsec. It is a tunnel-less architecture solution of a SD-WAN. What it means, once there is no IPsec, once there is no N into N minus 1 tunnels, I am reducing the complexity and increasing the simplicity. Right? That is the one. Second, you can scale because there is no IPsec tunnels. So the scalability is huge. You can have 10,000 branches in one SD-WAN solution. Right? That is the second. And the third, what it brings is, whenever you talk about SD-WAN, they talk about packet-based architecture. What we talk about is a session-based architecture because they are application aware. Applications are always based on sessions. So we take care of the sessions of the application aware networking. That is the key what we bring in. And fourth is, it is very cloud friendly. That means to say that if you have hosted your applications on the cloud, like a local internet breakout, it can automatically go to the cloud. Right? So you don't need to define policies for local internet breakout. You don't have to define policies which should go inside the IPsec, which should not go outside the IPsec. All those is irrelevant for us. It is very simple. It is very easy to configure. It is very easy to manage because you have just a tunnel-less architecture, session-based. And also we do one good thing. We do adaptive encryption. That means to say, when the application is encrypted or voice over IP is encrypted or video is encrypted, we never encrypt the traffic again. We don't encrypt the traffic. We send as it is. This is known as adaptive encryption. What do you achieve from all this? You achieve is 30 to 50% of the bandwidth you can reclaim back. What does it mean? It means that, for example, you say in one of the branches, I have 4 MB, but I want to increase it to 8 MB. You don't have to do it. Because with this technology, that 4 MB will be much more sufficient for you to run all your applications. Because you are reclaiming back the 30 to 50% of the overheads of the IPsec, adaptive encryption, you are doing it. So you reduce your bandwidth and it is increase your efficiency as well as the experience. So that is where we come in terms of the AI ops, in terms of the SD-WAN perspective. So that is where I want to leave it in terms of what is that what we bring in terms of the innovations, how we have made it very simple using our complete AI-based technology, AI ops, and then also helping you to increase the user experience with operator experience so that you can pinpoint exactly where the problem is, resolve those issues, and then actually have the network which is very high uptime, high scalable, high flexible, and finally highly reliable. So with this, I will hand it over to Kewal to talk about a little bit on campus and the security architecture what we have. Kewal. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh, for covering the details, what we had to talk about. So, data center and branch is obviously the most critical from a banking perspective. The banks are where the data center is where the application is hosted, which is business critical, and the branch is where the customers walk in. So that's their primary point of contact. Of course, now the points of contact have increased remotely, online, and so on and so forth. But still, in tier 2 cities or tier 3 cities or remote locations, the branch is still the first place that a customer walks in from a banking perspective. But not leaving the campuses or where the employees and the partners of the banks connect. So these are some of the requirements, where designing of a campus or what are the facilities given in a campus from a network or infrastructure point of view would have importance to a bank. So things like mechanism of connectivity. The campus could be a two-seater location somewhere remotely. Nowadays, it can be also work from home in some cases on some days, or it could be a medium or a large campus. Anything from a single floor to a full building or multiple floors in that building. So those places are where the employees sit. They do their daily business of the banking customer, right from trading or insurance and all those things. That's where people are doing it from. So the one thing which is required from these employees is uniformity of experience. If I am sitting in, let's say my data center is in Mumbai and I am sitting in Mumbai, and my colleague is sitting in Pune, it should not happen that I get access to resources faster and the person in Pune doesn't get access to resources that fast. Of course, it doesn't happen today anymore, but that uniformity of experience from a network point of view is what is looked at. Secondly, importantly is the role-based access or the intent-based access for that employee. So if I am logging in as an insurance agent today, I should be given access to the servers, to the applications, to the portal, to the database which I am supposed to access. Okay. Normally, it doesn't happen that one person will have multiple roles. So the point is, tomorrow if I'm sitting in another office with the same role as an insurance agent, I should be given that same access in that location also. It should not be that only if you sit in XYZ office or the head office, you'll get all the information, you won't get it in the secondary office. So those are the points what we need to consider. And what Juniper does is, provide the infrastructure, that is the switches and access points for employees to access. But more importantly, it gives the bank visibility into what the employees are accessing. If they are not able to access a certain resource, we can even demarcate whether something is wrong within the network component part of it, like the cables or the switches, routers. Also, we can demarcate between non-networking components, like if there is a DNS failure or there is a DHCP failure. If I am not able to get an IP address, that is not a failure of the switches per se, but it may be a failure or some latency on the DHCP side. So those kind of details which are not specifically from network point of view can also be given by the solution that we have, right? So these are some of the points where we score over rest of the market, and we are way ahead in terms of that. So just give me 2-3 minutes more, I'll be done. So this is how we deliver the service level experiences, as we call it, instead of SLAs, and the experience first of the industry that we are talking about. First one is the day zero. That means we already make templates, as Rajesh sir was already talking about, blueprints. In the same way for the campuses also, we can make blueprints for the access points and the policies and everything. As soon as the access point is connected, that information is downloaded into it, and immediately within a matter of few seconds, actually I've seen it in 30 seconds, I was able to connect and start using the network in our office. So it is that fast, so it doesn't take long to deploy new campuses or new locations. Along with that, from a operational point of view, if you see that screen on the left-hand side, there are multiple parameters, right? Those are something which we call SLEs. Of course, due to time shortage, I'm not going into details of those. But that is where it's a user or the end user parameters which are shown, not the network statistics. Okay, so successful connects, if there is any disruption in that, if a switch goes down, if there is an unused VLAN, there are a lot of other things. And to enable all of that, what we do is, in addition to the WAN assurance, we use something called as the AI tool, which is the Marvis Virtual Network Assistant. This is like Siri, but it's not voice activated. It is, you have to type in your query. However, it can give you like a natural language answer. For example, if I type in show me unhappy customers or unhappy clients in my network, it has a set of parameters which it says that if these parameters are missing, that client is unhappy. So it will show you the list of unhappy clients, which is unhappy is like a human emotion, right? So in the back end, it is all the data which is captured from the client connectivity, and it is analyzed using machine learning and AI, and then it is presented to the network administrator in this format. So that is how in the real world, and it also shows you corrective actions. If you see in the right-hand side, we have something called as Marvis Actions. So it shows you the corrective actions that you can take to mitigate the issue. Going ahead, you can also integrate it back into the network, saying that the actions will happen automatically. So it's like a self-learning network. Okay, and that is where the future lies in terms of how AI is redefining the networking industry. The last but the ubiquitous option is security, and as we know, security is the perimeter is everywhere, which means to say security is present in all those things. So what we do is, no matter which part of the security we are talking of, Juniper has a role to play, whether it is at the edge, at the data center, at the campus, as well as at the branch, and of course on the WAN. Right. So this is what I was talking about, connectivity, and this has been recognized on the data center since a long time. But recently, in the campus and branch scenario, as well as on the SD-WAN, we have received recognition from many other institutes, one of them being Gartner. So that's what we are talking about here. And we can also do a lot of location-aware things which we are looking at from a branch perspective. So the key takeaway, this was a slide which was already shown, but now we can see that from each of these components or the pillars, Juniper has something to give uniquely and which will help the bank for today as well as for the future requirements. So with that, I would like to end. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. Okay, fine. So I'm running short of time anyways. So thank you so much for your patience. Thank you.